Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the Sarasota Nightmare Part 2. Today we're talking about the tragic life of Carly Bershea. After exhausting any possible ideas that Susan and Stephen had come up with looking for their 11-year-old daughter, Susan would make a very frantic and distressed call to the 911 and report her 11-year-old daughter missing. And sensing a sense of urgency, the dispatcher would quickly send the police over to the home of Susan and Stephen. The police would promptly arrive at the residence of Susan and Stephen and would begin questioning them, asking about what had led up to the phone call to 911. There, Susan would tell the police that on January 31st, Carly would ask her to go stay the night at a friend's house that was roughly about a mile down the road. And she would have a girl sleep over at her friend's house and would spend most of the evening with them, where she had planned on coming home around when the Super Bowl was happening to watch it with her and her family. Susan would then tell police that around 6 p.m., her friend, Mother Connie, would call her and tell her that Carly had begun walking on the way home. Susan would also express that she did not want her walking home alone as she was only 11 years old. The police would also ask Susan if she possibly could have ran away, to where Susan and Stephen would both retort this and say they do not believe that she would run away as she was very happy at home. So the police would then put a BOLO report or be on the lookout for Carly Bershea. And they would take a few portraits of Carly and create some missing person ads. After the police had created the flyers and put the BOLO report on Carly, the police would begin walking around in surrounding areas, asking different people if they had seen Carly or knew about her whereabouts. And while this is going on, Susan and Stephen would begin going to different businesses around the areas and handing out flyers and putting these flyers on telephone poles just so they could get an idea of where Carly was. The police, Susan and Stephen, would do this all night and find no trace of Carly whatsoever. The following morning on February 2nd, 2004, people who had been concerned and worried about Carly had hoped or had high hopes that she might return at school. Everyone who had attended the school would promptly arrive at their classrooms, and everyone would be seated as school would start. That is, everyone but one seat, the seat that would belong to Carly Bershea. While school was going on, the police would arrive to the home of Stephen and Susan, and there they would also bring with them a canine unit. They would also tell Susan and Stephen that they wanted to see if they could go into the room of Carly and use the dogs to try to sniff out her location. They would bring the dogs into her room, and the dogs began sniffing her pillows, her clothes, and different things around the room so that the dogs could have a good scent of Carly. The police would also approach Susan and would also tell her that they did not want her to give up hope, but they also wanted her to go to the dentist and get a copy of her dental records, that in the off chance that something had happened to Carly, they could identify her quicker. After the police would leave their residence, the police would make a small detour to the home of Connie and Danielle. Now, considering that Danielle was already in school, they would ask Connie about the previous night where Carly had stayed over and would ask if there was any problems at home. But Connie would tell a completely different story than the one that Susan had told police earlier. There, Connie would tell the police that Carly had been staying over at their house a lot more and would use it as a way to escape her home. And on the night that she had went missing, she had expressed not only to Danielle but to Connie that Carly was feeling rather depressed and was feeling very overwhelmed by chores at the house or just the lifestyles at her home. And since that was one of the last places that Carly had been, the police would then bring the canine unit that had sniffed out Carly's room, and they would begin sniffing around the house and begin tracking down the last movements of Carly. And the dogs would follow from Connie's house all the way over to B Street, where the dogs would walk into a car wash that lived on B Street. And they would follow it to the behind the car wash, where there was like this little parking lot and storage area. And somewhere halfway there, the dogs would lose Carly's scent. The police were kind of baffled because it was almost as if Carly just up and disappeared. And they would begin looking around the area, and they would look up and notice a CCTV right around the area where Carly would just disappear. So the police would waste no time going into the car wash and asking the owner if they could retrieve the footage from the CCTV camera, which he had no objections to. The police would also go to the surrounding areas of the car wash and collect CCTV footage from those companies, and would tell them that they were looking for an 11-year-old girl and they needed to see the footage of the previous night. Once the police got the footage, they would map out the time that they had figured that Carly had walked to the area right around that time. And they had speculated and theorized that Carly should have walked in this area right around 6:20 p.m. And sure enough, at 6:20 p.m., they would see 11-year-old Carly Brochea walking down the area behind the car wash. And they had speculated that she had probably walked behind the car wash as a way to make a shortcut on the way home. She would be wearing the same clothes that Connie and Susan had both described to the police that she had been wearing the night that she had went missing. And it had seemed like from the video footage that she was listening to music with her Walkman. But what happened next, the police were not prepared for. Out of view, it could be seen a man in a metallic uniform walking up to Carly and spooking her. As she jumps back, he grabs her arm and he says something to her and then drags her off out of view. It is at this point that the police realized that off of this CCTV footage, they were realizing it was an abduction on camera. The police would begin looking over this footage over and over, trying to break down any clues they could find. And a few things would stand out about this video footage. For starters, it was very apparent that Carly Brochea did not know who this person was whatsoever, because Carly was someone that was very well known of being friendly and would not pass anyone she knew without saying hi. The second thing that the cops would realize was he did in fact have a work metallic uniform. And not only that, he would also have a name tag on his uniform. And they could tell by looking at the name tag, but they could not quite make out the name because of the quality of the video. But they could tell that there was definitely 3 letters in his name tag. After grabbing her arm, it could be seen this man was facing Carly, and he would stick his free hand in his pocket. It has been speculated by police that this person at this point in time probably told Carly that he had a weapon in his pocket, and if she did not do exactly as he said, that he would hurt her. And it is at this point that he led her away. But as the police were trying to break down the CCTV footage, they would get a phone call from one of the companies around on B Street. And one of the employees would tell the police that earlier they had had a visit from Susan and Stephen. And once coming into the building, Stephen would hand out a flyer looking for Carly. And after he had handed out the poster, he would look at the employee and ask if he could buy some illegal substances from him. And the employee thought it was very strange of Stephen to ask such a question, considering his daughter had been missing for 24 hours. It is at this point that the police wasted no time, and they decided to call Stephen in for an investigation as a person of interest.